Hello and welcome to 3 Minute Gaming. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to tell you if this game's with their time and bandwidth. Today's game is Cyber Citizen Shockman. The first in a long-lost turbografx platforming trilogy hits the West with Shockman 1. Was this a retro hidden gem? Let's find out. Cyber Citizen Shockman is a 2D platformer from 1989 that just now got revamped and re-released in the West with a bunch of extra features, including invincibility, which you will definitely see in some of the footage. The game has an interesting structure, somewhat akin to Mega Man. There's a big map of areas to beat, each representing a stage, and conquering it gives some kind of upgrade to health, damage, or more. You can just beeline for the final stage and beat the game in 10 minutes, but that might be a little difficult, so it's worth trying to conquer more stages for more upgrades. Pro tip, always go south for the sword upgrade first, trust me. This also ties into a time mechanic as you have a limited number of days to beat the game, and should you fail a stage, time still passes. Again, this works well with the decisions around completing the map or just attempting the final stage. Levels themselves play out as short 2D platforming segments ending in a boss fight. These start simple but quickly escalate with a focus on moving or disappearing platforms, more aggressive enemies, and hazards. And the complexity increases the further into the game you get. There's really only two bosses at the end, the dragon and a mech, though their movesets and life vary as you go along. The dragon in particular has wonky hitboxes and often goes invisible, which is pretty annoying. Shockman, or Shockwoman, depending on the character you pick, has a very limited kit. You have a charged projectile which you can't use until you get a gun license from the cops. Yes, really. So you'll mostly be using melee. You can duck but can't duck an attack, and his jump feels, well, off. His movement momentum is also pretty weird as he kind of slips around as if he's on ice all the time. Between stages, you can use earned cash to either heal or buy a small number of upgrades. And lastly, you can play this whole game in co-op, which is pretty cool. And that's Shockman, a retro 2D platformer now re-released, with some variability in its level order, as well as a whole lot of rough edges. So what did I like about Cyber Citizen Shockman? Well, the idea of choosing which path, stages, and upgrades to engage with before a final boss is really clever for the time, and reminds me a lot of the risk-reward struggle in modern roguelikes. Additionally, the visuals, while dated, have some charming backdrops, and a lot of the music is great. The factory theme in specific is a straight-up banger. And lastly, this is a great emulated conversion, with no major issues and tons of great improvements like rewind, save states, invincibility, unlimited cash, and more. I'm also glad Radalakia brought it over for the sake of preservation. When it comes to the bad, this is one of the worst controlling games I've had the displeasure of playing. Shockman's momentum is terrible, all his actions feel delayed, and the hitboxes for everything are quite inconsistent. And speaking of inconsistent, the stage quality is all over the place, with some being a reasonable challenge and others feel like the game is trolling you. Thank God for rewind. And lastly, this game is really short. Think 45 minutes to beat every single stage, which to be fair is on par for this era, but considering the price, keep that in mind. But hey, 2 easy platinums if you have a PS5. As you know, rate games here on a 3-point scale, must play, maybe consider, and don't bother. And as mentioned, I am thankful this game is being preserved, but there's no way I can recommend it today unless you're like me and care about thoroughly average retro experiences. Shockman's few unique ideas are buried under its jank, with the whole thing varying from fine to frustrating. The sequels do get a bit better, thankfully, but you should probably just skip the first in the Shockman trilogy. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Have you played or even heard of this Shockman game? Are you a retro game or game preservation enthusiast? Please let me know what you think about that in the comments, or regardless, go out there and maybe don't play this first Shockman game.